dwarf alien girl was left for being too small until the human invited her back to Earth, a thought that was equal parts promise and insanity, and it was the only thing Jax could cling to as he dragged her kicking and screaming through the guts of the dead warship. The air tasted of ozone and rust, each metallic groan of the ship's hull punctuated by the sizzle of plasma fire scorching the corridor behind them. "For fuck's sake, would you stop trying to dislocate my shoulder?" he grunted, yanking her around a corner. She was heavy, dense with muscle, and fighting him with the ferocity of a cornered predator. Her nails, sharp as obsidian shards, dug into his arm. "Release me, off-worlder!" Her voice was a guttural command, a sound too large for her frame. "I will not be claimed as spoils by a soft-skinned scavenger." Jax risked a glance back. Two hulking shapes, warriors of her kind, the Cathar, rounded the bend, their armor reflecting the emergency strobes. Shit. He'd just wanted a few intact power converters. A simple salvage run. Instead, he'd stumbled into an execution. He'd found her chained in the brig, her sentence scrawled on the wall in her own language. Unfit, unclaimed, unworthy. And he, the unlucky traitor with a heart 2 sizes too stupid, had decided he couldn't just leave her there. "Lady, I'm not claiming you, I'm saving you. There's a difference," he yelled, shoving her toward a narrow maintenance hatch he'd spotted earlier. "They wish to reclaim my body for the ritual of shame," she snarled, planting her feet. Her strength was absurd. "You seek to steal that prize for yourself. I will die with my own spine, not as your trophy." Another plasma bolt hit the wall beside his head, showering them in hot metal. "Jesus Christ, you're dramatic." He gave up on persuasion, spun her around and shoved her bodily through the hatch. He tumbled in after her, pulling the heavy door shut just as another blast slagged the metal where they'd been standing. The sudden darkness was absolute, the silence broken only by their ragged breathing. He was pinned against the cold wall and she was pressed against him, a solid, warm, and furious presence in the suffocating dark. The maintenance duct was tight, a coffin for 2. Jax could feel the rigid plates of her armor digging into his ribs, the heat of her body a stark contrast to the chilled metal around them. Every breath she took pushed her chest against his. He tried to shift, to create an inch of space, but there was nowhere to go. "Get your hands off me," she hissed, her voice a low vibration against his collarbone. He could feel the tension in her, a coiled spring of violence. "My hands are on the wall," he whispered back, his voice strained. "Unless you've got a third arm you haven't told me about. You're the one doing all the touching." A low growl was her only response. He could hear the Cathar warriors clomping past their hiding spot, their heavy footfalls echoing through the ship's structure. Jax held his breath, every muscle screaming. He could smell her, a strange, clean scent like static electricity before a lightning strike. It was intoxicating and terrifying. "Why were they going to kill you?" he murmured, the question slipping out before he could stop it. He felt her stiffen. "It is not for a soft skin to know the rights of the Cathar. They called you unfit," he pressed, ignoring the warning. "You look pretty damn fit to me. A little short for your people, maybe, but you're built like a brick shithouse." The silence that followed was heavy, dangerous. He felt a sudden, sharp pressure at his throat. Her fingers, strong as steel clamps, wrapped around his neck. "You mock my stature," she whispered, her voice lethal. "I could break you, little man. I could shatter your windpipe and listen to you gurgle your last pathetic breath in this tomb." Jax's heart hammered against his ribs. "Fuck." His stupid mouth. "Not a mock," he choked out. "An observation. An admiring one, even. Where I'm from, compact and deadly is a good thing." Her grip didn't loosen, but the killing pressure eased slightly. "Your words are twisted, like your body, all soft angles and weakness." "Yeah, well, we can't all be angry, muscle-bound aliens, can we?" He shot back, sarcasm his only defense. "Now, are you going to help me get us out of here? Or are you going to strangle our only ticket off this scrap heap?" He felt her shift, and her face was suddenly inches from his in the dark. He couldn't see her, but he could feel her breath on his lips. "You are my ticket?" Her grip on his throat finally loosened, her hand sliding down to rest on his chest, a gesture that felt less like a comfort and more like she was checking his structural integrity. "My people value strength," she said, her voice flat, stripped of its earlier rage. "Physical presence. A warrior's worth is measured in their shadow, their reach. My bloodline is pure, but my form is a throwback. An insult. Jax processed that. A whole culture of assholes who judged people by their height. That's the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard, he said, the words raw with an honesty that surprised even him. She went still again. He could practically feel the gears turning in her head, her entire worldview grinding against his casual profanity. It is our way, she said, but the conviction was gone. It is the path to acclaiming, the right that proves a warrior's might and secures their future. Sounds more like a path to being a dick, he muttered. A loud clang echoed from outside the duct, followed by a shouted order in the Cathar language. They were searching grid by grid. They weren't giving up. Without a word, Kira moved. It was a fluid, silent motion in the pitch black. He heard a faint scrape as she popped a small panel on the side of the duct. A sliver of red light from the corridor sliced into their hiding spot, illuminating her face for the first time. She was beautiful, but in a way that defied human standards. High, sharp cheekbones, wide-set eyes that seemed to drink the light, and skin with a faint pearlescent sheen. A jagged, faded scar ran across her left temple. A broken bond mark, he guessed. A lone guard stomped past the opening. Before Jax could even think to react, Kira's arm shot out through the gap. There was a sickening crunch, a wet gurgle, and the heavy thud of a body hitting the floor. She retracted her arm, silent as a phantom, and sealed the panel. The darkness returned, but it was different now. It was filled with the knowledge of her lethality. Jax swallowed hard, his throat dry. Okay, he breathed. So you're good at that. He felt her turn toward him again. I am good at survival, she corrected. You seem to be merely lucky. Now tell me about your ship, scavenger. And do not lie. I will smell it on your breath. The dead guard bought them time. They crawled through the ducts, the silence between them thick with a new kind of tension. It wasn't just predator and prey anymore. It was professional respect. A very, very scary professional respect. They finally emerged into a cavernous cargo bay, its ceiling lost in shadows. A massive, shattered viewport revealed the blackness of space and the curve of the ritual-ringed moon they were on. Across 100 meters of exposed gantry catwalk, Jax's ship, the Rust Bucket, sat on a derelict landing pad. It was an ugly patchwork freighter, but it was beautiful to him. There, he said, pointing. That's our ride. Kira's eyes narrowed, scanning the open space. The gantry is a kill zone. Your ship is a coffin waiting to be sealed. It's also our only way out, Jax countered. I know the path. There's cover behind those coolant tanks. We just need to be fast. She turned her sharp gaze on him. The power dynamic had shifted. She wasn't just his prisoner or a victim anymore. She was a combat specialist. Your speed is a liability. Your soft skin will not stop a plasma bolt. I will create a diversion. You will run. He bristled at the command. Hey, it's my ship, my escape plan. We do this together. You lay down covering fire. I'll get us to the halfway point. Then we switch. She studied him, her head cocked. You wish to share the honor of the charge? I wish to not get shot in the ass, he said. Let's just haul ass, all right? She blinked, her gaze flicking down to his backside with a genuinely confused, analytical expression. He felt an absurd blush creep up his neck. Your posterior is adequate, she stated as if assessing livestock, but its structural durability is irrelevant. Speed is the primary concern. Jax's brain short-circuited for a second. It's a saying. It means run fast. Human slang? Never mind. He shook his head, trying to get back on track. Look, I know this wreck, you know combat. We need each other. Deal? For a long moment, she just stared at him. He could see the conflict in her eyes, the ingrained cultural disdain for relying on a smaller, weaker being versus the cold, hard logic of survival. Finally, she gave a curt, sharp nod. Your plan is flawed, but it is the only one we have. I will provide suppression. If you fall behind, I will leave your soft body to the scavengers. Wouldn't have it any other way, princess. He shot back, a grin tugging at his lips. The fear was still there, a cold knot in his stomach, but something else was mixing with it now. A thrill. This tiny, deadly alien was the most alive thing he'd ever met. The first step onto the gantry was a death sentence. Red plasma bolts immediately stitched the air around them. "Go!" Kira yelled, shoving him forward as she dropped to one knee, the Cathar rifle she'd taken from the guard barking in her hands. Jax ran. He'd never run so hard in his life, his boots clanging on the metal catwalk, the void of space yawning below him. He dove behind the coolant tanks, the metal screaming as a volley of shots impacted right where he'd been. He risked a look back. Kira was a whirlwind of motion, firing and moving, using the minimal cover with an efficiency that was terrifyingly beautiful. She was drawing their fire, giving him the opening. "Your turn, scavenger," she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. He popped up, his own blaster feeling like a toy in his hands, and laid down a spray of suppressive fire toward the mercenaries fanning out from the cargo bay doors. "Move it! Move it!" he screamed. She sprinted, her movements low and impossibly fast. She flowed over the gantry like smoke, reaching his position in seconds. They were halfway there, just 50 more meters. Then a searing pain exploded in his left thigh. Jax cried out, his leg buckling under him. He hit the deck hard, his head bouncing off the metal grate. The world swam in a nauseating haze of pain and flashing lights. "Shit! Fuck, I'm hit!" Through the ringing in his ears, he heard Kira curse, a harsh, guttural sound. He expected her to keep going. That was the deal. "If you fall behind, I will leave you." But she didn't. He felt her hands on him, rolling him over. Her face was a mask of furious concentration. "The bone is intact," she declared, her fingers probing the wound with a practiced, impersonal touch. "Can you stand?" "I don't know, I just got shot," he gasped, trying to push himself up, but his leg was a useless dead weight. The mercenaries were advancing, their shots getting closer. This was it. This was how the unlucky trader finally cashed in his chips. But Kira slung his arm over her shoulders, grabbing him around the waist. With a grunt of effort, she hauled him to his feet. "Then I will carry you," she snarled, and began to move, half dragging, half carrying him toward the rust bucket. He was leaning on her, his blood smearing on her armor, the sharp, ozonic scent of her filling his senses. It wasn't about confinement anymore. It was about survival. It was about her impossible strength and his complete dependence on it. They slammed against the outer hull of his ship. Kira fumbled with one hand to slap the airlock control, her other arm a steel band around him. The door hissed open, and she shoved them both inside, collapsing with him in a heap as the ramp sealed them in blessed, sudden silence. The adrenaline crashed hard, leaving Jax trembling and sick. He slumped against the airlock wall, hissing as he put pressure on his leg. The wound was a deep, cauterized furrow in his thigh. It hurt like a motherfucker, but at least it wasn't bleeding much. Kira was already in the cockpit, her fingers flying over the pre-flight controls, her earlier fury replaced by a cold, focused calm. The ship's engines whined to life. "Get us in the air," he rasped, pulling a med kit from a storage locker. She didn't answer, her attention fixed on the console. The rust bucket shuddered as it lifted off the pad. A moment later, a proximity alert shrieked. A Cathar vessel was powering up its weapons. "Evasive maneuvers now," Jax yelled, fumbling with a synth skin patch. Instead of following his order, Kira locked the controls, turned off the alert, and faced him. The cockpit was bathed in the dim, red glow of the combat lighting, and her eyes were blazing with an intensity that had nothing to do with the battle outside. "You bled for me," she said, her voice low and resonant. "You returned for me when you could have fled." In the eyes of the Cathar, a warrior who aids another in the face of death offers a challenge. A bid. "A bid for what?" Jax asked, his hands freezing on the medkit. The air in the small cockpit felt thick, charged. He knew this wasn't about military tactics anymore. She took a step toward him, then another. She moved like a hunter closing in. "A claiming," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "You have proven sufficient." Before he could process the words, she was on him. She pushed him back against the pilot's chair, her body pressing him into the worn upholstery. It wasn't a request, it was a declaration. Her hands tangled in his hair, pulling his head back. Her mouth crashed down on his. It wasn't a kiss of affection, it was a kiss of conquest. It was rough, demanding, and tasted of ozone and victory. A part of his brain screamed in protest, in shock. But the rest of him, the part that had been running on fear and adrenaline for hours, responded with a primal force of its own. He met her fire, his hands finding her waist, pulling her impossibly closer. The pain in his leg vanished, burned away by a different kind of heat. This was what she was, not just a warrior but a force of nature, a storm he was caught in. The fight for survival on the gantry had bled into this, a raw, desperate collision in the cockpit of a dying ship. Her armor was cold and hard against his skin, but the body underneath was blazing hot. Clothes were torn away with a practical, frantic urgency. It was a claiming, a ritual, but somewhere in the middle of it, it became something else. It became a desperate need to feel something other than fear, to affirm life in the face of death. As he arched into her, a cry torn from his throat, she sank her teeth into the flesh of his shoulder. A sharp, shocking pain that lanced through the pleasure. A mark, a brand. And in that moment, he wasn't a soft-skinned scavenger anymore. He was hers. The silence that fell afterward was heavier than the vacuum of space outside. Jax's body thrummed with a weird mix of exhaustion, pleasure, and profound confusion. His thigh throbbed in time with his pulse. He stared at the metal ceiling of his cockpit, the ship drifting silently, and tried to make sense of the last 10 minutes. What the fuck had just happened? He felt used, taken, conquered. But under that, a strange, unwelcome warmth spread through his chest. For the first time, someone hadn't seen him as an unlucky, scrappy traitor. She had seen him as sufficient. Kira sat up, turning her back to him. The red combat lights traced the elegant, powerful lines of her spine. She touched the old, faded scar on her temple, the broken bond mark. Then her gaze fell to his shoulder. He followed her look. 4 deep puncture wounds, already ringed with an angry purple, stood out against his skin. A bite mark. "What the hell did you do to me?" he asked, his voice rough. She looked at him, and for the first time he saw something other than fury or lust in her eyes. It was something fragile, something akin to fear. "I marked you," she said simply, as if explaining a basic law of physics. "It is the final seal of a claiming." "You sealed... what?" He pushed himself up, ignoring the flare of pain in his leg. "You jumped me. That wasn't a ceremony, that was... I don't even know what that was." "It was necessary," she said, and her voice was tight, strained. The commanding tone was gone, replaced by a raw vulnerability that was more shocking than her violence. A Cathar cannot remain unclaimed. The spirit, it fades. The body weakens. The shame consumes us from within. She gestured from the old scar on her head to the fresh mark on his shoulder. "My first bond was broken by my sire when I failed to reach the growth markers. He shamed me, exiled me. I have been fading ever since." Jack stared at her, the pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. This wasn't just about sex. It wasn't a thank you. It was a life raft. She had latched onto him to save herself. "So you bit me to recharge your batteries?" The crassness of his words hung in the air. She flinched. "I bonded to you," she corrected, her voice barely a whisper. "My life force is now tied to yours. It is a temporary measure. Unless the bond is accepted by both parties, it will sever. And I will not survive a second breaking." The weight of her words crushed the air from his lungs. This was so much worse than a one-night stand. He was an unwilling participant in a goddamn life-or-death soul bond. "Are you fucking kidding me?" Jax exploded, shoving himself away from her, the motion sending a fresh wave of agony up his leg. "The whole life-or-death soul bond thing? You couldn't have maybe led with that before you decided to use me as your personal chew toy?" He was pacing, or trying to, limping back and forth in the cramped space between the chairs. He felt violated, tricked. Kira started, then stopped. She looked small for the first time, huddled in the co-pilot's seat, pulling a discarded tunic over her shoulders. "I did not expect it to work. I did not expect you." The confession was quiet, almost lost in the hum of the ship's life support. "No one has ever been sufficient. No one has ever fought for me. The right began on its own." The instinct was overwhelming. "Oh, so your alien lizard brain took over and now I'm roped into your cultural bullshit." He ran a hand through his sweat-damp hair, his anger warring with a pity he didn't want to feel. He was looking at a woman who had been so thoroughly broken by her own people that she saw a desperate act of survival as her only way forward. He hated them for it. He hated her for dragging him into it. A sudden jarring alarm blared through the cockpit, cutting through the tension. A proximity alert. No, a communications hail. The insignia of the Cathar elders flashed on the main screen. They'd found them. "They will demand my return," Kira said, her voice regaining a sliver of its hard edge. She straightened her spine. "They will offer you payment, fuel, credits, your life." He looked from the flashing screen to her. She was right. This was his out. He could hand over the damaged goods, the unfit warrior, and be on his way. He could get his leg fixed, sell the salvage, and forget any of this ever happened. Forget the feel of her hands on him, the desperate heat in her eyes, the shame she carried like a shroud. He could go back to being unlucky, but at least he'd be free. The comm channel crackled, waiting for his response. He could see it so clearly. The easy way out. Just give her up. Jack stared at the comm screen, at the arrogant, sneering face of the Cathar elder that would soon appear there. He imagined the words, the offer. "Give us the shamed one, and you may pass." It was a simple transaction. His entire life was built on transactions, most of them bad. This one was clean. He looked at Kira. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring straight ahead. Her jaw set, her hands clenched into fists in her lap. She was preparing for the inevitable, for him to sell her out, just like her father had, just like her entire culture had. She expected it. In that moment, he didn't see an alien warrior who had tricked him into a life bond. He saw a kindred spirit. Someone else the universe had decided to relentlessly fuck over. Someone judged for things they couldn't control. A sudden, reckless anger surged through him. Fuck them, fuck their rules, their rituals, their shame. He limped back to the pilot's chair and hit the accept button for the video channel. The face of a grizzled, massive Cathar warrior filled the screen. Scars covered his face and his lip curled in a permanent sneer. "Scavenger!" The elder's voice boomed, dripping with contempt. "You harbor a fugitive, a vessel of shame. Surrender her to us for purification, and we will permit you to leave our space." Jax didn't say a word. He reached out, grabbed Kira by the arm, and yanked her into his lap. She let out a startled gasp, her eyes wide with shock. He ignored her, his gaze locked on the screen. He leaned in and kissed her, hard and possessively. A bruising, defiant kiss that was all for the camera. He pulled back, his hand deliberately moving to cover the fresh bite mark on his shoulder, displaying it for the elder to see. "She's not a vessel of shame," Jax snarled, his voice a low, dangerous growl he didn't know he possessed. "She's the one who claimed me, and we're in the middle of something. Find someone else to bully." He slammed his hand down on the console, cutting the transmission. The elder's shocked, furious face vanished, leaving them once again in the quiet of the cockpit. The silence stretched, thick and profound. Kira stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a dangerous, beautiful smile spread across her lips. It was the first real smile he'd seen from her, and it was the most terrifying and thrilling thing he had ever witnessed. He hadn't just accepted her bond. He'd taken her shame and thrown it back in their faces. The rust bucket shuddered violently as a plasma cannon blast scored its portside shields. Red alerts screamed through the cockpit. "Shields at 40%, Jax yelled, grabbing the controls. "They're not bluffing!" He threw the ship into a spiraling dive, the artificial gravity groaning in protest. Kira was already at the co-pilot station, her earlier shock replaced by lethal focus. Her fingers flew across the console, rerouting auxiliary power to the aft shields and arming the ship's pathetic defensive cannons. "Their targeting solution is clumsy," she said, her voice crisp and clear over the alarms. "They expect a freighter to be slow. They do not expect a warrior at the helm." "Good, because they've got a half-dead traitor with a bum leg," he shot back, weaving the ship through the asteroid debris that ringed the moon. "Target their primary weapon array. It's on the dorsal side. Overheats after 3 shots. How do you know that? I tried to scavenge one last year. Now shoot the damn thing." Their banter was back, the sarcastic, charged energy that had defined them from the start. But it was different now. It was seamless. An easy, practiced rhythm of a team that had been forged in chaos. He flew, she fought. A plasma bolt lanced past the cockpit. close enough to make the viewport shimmer. Kira didn't flinch, her thumb slamming the firing stud. On the tactical display, 2 green bolts of energy slammed into the Cathar cruiser. A secondary explosion blossomed on its dorsal hull. "Weapon disabled," she announced, a note of grim satisfaction in her voice. "They are venting coolant." "Get ready to jump," Jax said, inputting the coordinates for the nearest trade lane. The nav computer chirped its confirmation. He risked a glance at her. The fury was gone, replaced by a calm, confident energy. She was in her element. He'd never seen anything like it. He'd spent his life running. She'd spent hers being told she wasn't enough. Maybe they could stop doing both. "So, Earth, huh?" he said as the hyperdrive began to whine. "It's crowded. The food's better, but you're gonna hate the paperwork." She turned to look at him, her gaze dropping to the claiming mark on his shoulder, then meeting his eyes. The look she gave him was intense, proprietary, and held a universe of unspoken promises. "My world is where my bondmaid is," she said, her voice a low, possessive purr. "Your world will learn to respect me." Jax just grinned. "Yeah, they probably will." He slammed the lever forward and the stars outside the viewport stretched into long blue lines, pulling them away from her past and into a messy, uncertain, and gloriously shared future.